a lot of people are just very selfish with their information and with the things that they've done and don't really want to. I'm all about putting people on, showing them exactly how I did it and not really caring if we do something together or we don't do something together. It's just more of, here's the value, you do what you want with it, but this is exactly how I did it.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. As always, I'm here with my co-host, John Cohen. John, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing well. Getting ready to go down over to Columbus, Ohio next week. Got the new deal we've been working on. Pretty excited about that. So just really looking forward to getting back there. Great town to go to.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm excited too because it should be a fun deal.
Yeah, and right around the corner from our last one, so it makes it almost nice and easy.
Exactly. Very, very simple, which we very rarely do. We like to complicate everything, but no, it should be good. You know, we get to check in on our current project and check out a new one.
Hopefully eat some good food.
Exactly.
Have some nice drinks as well.
There
Have a
you
good
go.
time. But I'm excited today. We have Hakeem with us today. I know you don't know him as much as I do, but we met back, I don't know, probably 3, 4, 5 months ago, just through Instagram, just kind of, you know, meeting each other and meeting different people. And he was actually it was through Bigger Pockets. Now that I think about it, just got caught by a nice title, ex-NFL player. Figured, hey, I got to reach out. I think it was New York Giants at the time. So it was like New York ex-football player, a current football player. I was like, I gotta at least reach out and meet this guy. And no expectations, but turned into to be, really good guy, really getting involved, knows his stuff, and is really giving back to a lot of people as well. But I'm going to save the intro for you, Hakeem. So why don't you do yourself a favor, give a better intro than I just gave, and tell the people who you are, what you're about, and what's your story.
Chris and John, thank you. I appreciate you guys for having me on the podcast.
Absolutely.
My name's Hakeem, just retired from a 3-year NFL career. I've been actually investing in real estate for the past 7 years. Currently focusing on multifamily properties, just like yourself, and also getting into alternative investments into the cannabis industry as well. And I'm also a keynote speaker and the father of a 10-month-old daughter.
There you go.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. You got a father of a 10-month-old, a father of a 4-month-old. I didn't mess it up this time. So you guys probably have some war stories and some good stories you guys can trade. But just kind of focusing on your story, because I think it's probably different than most people's, right? Most people don't go to a league or the league and then get involved in the same way you did. So can you tell us a little bit more about, being in school, your brother getting drafted, and then kind of what you decided to do instead of going the kind of traditional route that a lot of guys take?
Yeah, no doubt. So my real estate journey started in college. My degree is business with a concentration in real estate. And while I was in college, my ex-girlfriend, her dad had just started his own house flipping business. Mm-hmm. And he took me under his wing. And it was real, he was the mastermind. His first cousin was the contractor, and I was kind of the muscle and kind of just the mentee, learning everything. I was, knocking down walls, putting down floors, putting in offers on pre-foreclosures, driving for dollars. I hand wrote the direct mail letters back then and used to actually just drop it right into people's, you couldn't do it in mailboxes because it was illegal, but into their doors.
I'm sure your coach loved you swinging all those hammers too.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that it's funny, like, because you say it's, you're not supposed to do that. So I used to drive around with a sticky pad and with like notes, and I would just stick them on the door. So just because you're not supposed to put it in the mailbox or whatever. So I used to just stick letters,
That's smart.
Stick stuff right to people's door or whatever on vacant houses. So I hear you 100%. And it works.
Absolutely. So yeah, it was an awesome experience, kind of getting that hands on, doing it in the field as opposed to being in the classroom, learning how to be an employee at like a large commercial real estate firm. It was like a rich dad, poor dad relationship. Mm-hmm. And, it was awesome. And then me and his daughter broke up, so that entire relationship ended.
as it usually does. Where was this, by the way?
This is North Jersey. So this is in Essex County. We were in like Maplewood, South Orange, East Orange. I think we might have did one in Park Ridge. I can't really remember. but it was awesome. And as my little brother, it was Christmas break when it was my 5th year of college. And my little brother went to the NFL as a 20-year-old. He dropped out of University of Virginia as a sophomore to get drafted by the Oakland Raiders. And during Christmas break, I went out there to visit him. And while I was on the plane, he was actually on practice squad at that time. And when you're on practice squad, any team can take you off the practice squad with they can just take you. Mm-hmm. And while I was in the air, he got signed from the Raiders to the Bills. So I landed at like 4:00, and he had to be on a flight at 9:00 for practice the next day in Buffalo.
So that story happened. My buddy went to Syracuse. A running back for the Jets, named Jonathan. I forgot his last name, but he landed, got signed off the practice squad, got signed with the Jets, had to get on a flight. I think it was from Buffalo to New York. And he was on a flight with my buddy, and he landed. He's like, "You mind driving my friend to Hofstra, where the Jets were practicing at the time?" I was like, "Fuck yeah, man! Like, that's awesome! Like, a professional football player, why not?" So I actually drove him. But that story, it's just funny. Like you said, that life is crazy. No one even realizes those little things. But like you said, you fly out there, turn around, and come home.
It happens so quick. I mean, I'll give you another example before I even go into that. When I was this past year before I retired, when I got cut from the Lions, like right before Thanksgiving, and right after Thanksgiving, I was getting a whole bunch of calls for a bunch of workouts. I think I worked out for the Texans, and I was about to work. I flew out to Arizona, and you have to do like a day of physicals before the actual workout. And while I was in the middle of physicals, the Giants called and were like, "Yeah, we want to sign you, but no workout." And I was like, "No workout? All right, cool." Like this guy who, like, it's a first year intern for the team, for the Cardinals, and like is driving us to all of our physicals and all that. And I was like, "Yeah, so the Giants want to sign me. So you guys sure you still want to work me out?" And you're like, yeah, you got to do a workout. I'm like, all right, then I'm gonna get an Uber out of here because I gotta go to the I got practice tomorrow. So I literally, middle of physical, got an Uber.
That's funny.
I was on the next flight to New York, and that was a whirlwind of a day. Like, speaking, I mean, from Arizona, got to New York at like 5 a.m. Had to go up to the city. As soon as I get to the city, for the Giants, all their doctors are right in the, like, smack dab in Midtown. We get in a car accident, like the driver. So I didn't get back to the facility until like 5 p.m. It was the longest 48 hours probably of my life, but
that's not
very off topic. So when I flew out there and he got signed to the Bills, so I had to clean up his apartment all week and realized he was still stuck on his lease for another 6 months, and he was paying about $3,000 a month in Alameda, like right outside of San Fran. So
damn,
$18,000 going to air essentially. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of when I realized I'm not going to let that happen to me if and when I go to the NFL. And so when I went 2016 undrafted, I started out, I was living with my teammate who was the first round draft pick, just living for free. And I eventually, like, once the season started, it was probably October of the season, I got an apartment when I was paying about $2,000 a month. It was like month to month. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was protecting myself because, it's month to month. So if I get cut, like, nothing's going to happen. Then I was like, you know what? I'm going to spend $24,000 this year on nothing.
Yeah.
So why don't I try and actually execute on some of the stuff that I've been learning? And went and found a fourplex in North Phoenix, paid about $268 for it, and then used my FHA loan, and only came out of pocket $13,000 and lived for free. So I lived in one unit, rented out the other three. I had a Section 8 tenant living below me. My teammates thought I was insane. Like, why are you living in this neighborhood? Like, I had a solid, nicer car, so I had to always keep it in the garage because it was it wasn't the greatest neighborhood, but it was an awesome learning experience. Being able to live for free and, like, being instantly just right in the mud. Mm-hmm. It was awesome. And it set me up for when I inevitably got cut from the Cardinals. I took that unit that I was living in, and instead of renting it out, I Airbnb'd it. And it made, it would have rented for $750 with Airbnb. It made like $2,000 to $2,400 a month, depending on, like, the time of the year in Phoenix. And it was awesome. And, went to the Lions and did the same thing with a duplex, lived downstairs, Airbnb'd upstairs, and lived for free. And kind of just kept that mantra with me while I was in the league of, I'm not going to rent. I'm going to just kind of build my footprint wherever I go, wherever I play, and kind of take it from there.
Mm-hmm. So did you do the same thing when you came to New York or no?
New York
I
City.
did it. Yeah, New York's a whole different animal. And plus, my parents live in South Jersey. That's where I grew up. And I was only there I was already thinking about retiring and considering retiring at that point. And I don't ever think there was 4 or 5 weeks left in the season. So I was like, I'm going to try and take advantage of just meeting as many people as possible in this area. That's why you saw the Bigger Pockets post
Right.
while still in the league, because people tend to care about you more while you're playing.
Leverage. Yeah, exactly.
It's all about
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, you got to use that to use it or abuse it, right? Like,
100%.
cares?
milk it. So yeah, milked it, and really just tried to just network while I was in that area, because I went to a boarding school in Central Jersey, and I'd say 90% of the people I went to school with all live and work in New York now. So I really took advantage of kind of refreshing my network, getting back to people that I used to be in touch with when I first started, when I left, Jersey, when I went to the Cardinals in 2016, and started to just rebuild those relationships.
Yeah, that's awesome, because it's actually funny. I'm happy you're on, because I did a whole post on house hacking, and I like anytime someone reaches out, is like, oh, like I'm 20 or 18 or this, that, and the other, and I really want to get started. Like, what do I do? I'm like, have you heard about house hacking? And I'd say 75% of the time they haven't. I probably the best, if not one of the best ways for a young person or someone with not a lot of money who doesn't own a home to get started. And I think you're the perfect example of that, going to a neighborhood, living below your means, going out there, finding a fourplex you can take down and rent it out. How do you think that changed your scope or the way you entered into real estate?
I think it changed it. It changed it a lot, because initially when I, got into the league, it was more of like, man, I'm never going to have time to do real estate. Like, plays are taking too much time, kind of all of that. And then it was just like, once I had that oh crap moment of, I'm going to spend 24 grand on rent, like I need to really just change it. But once I actually did it, it changed everything. As one, obviously people took me a lot more seriously, because it's like, oh, you actually have a property, you have a 40
for sure
apartment building, and like people don't realize how much credibility actually means, and like back to almost like leverage too. Like people like, oh, so he maybe knows what he's talking about, or yeah, I'll go out to lunch with this guy or whatever. He's not just blowing smoke. But it's also just from an educational perspective, like I'd say I was overeducated on real estate to even buy that fourplex. And I think you really don't necessarily have to be that educated to get started. It's almost like getting thrown into the fire and learning by action, because I wouldn't say, like, there's obviously a lot of things that can go wrong, but there's not much that can go wrong while you're actually living there as well, because you kind of have, everything obviously all under your own roof, but then you're also kind of forced to now build out. Because me personally, like, I'm a shoot first, aim later kind of guy. Like, I'm not going to dwell about it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to do it first. And then after I realize everything that went wrong, I'm going to fix it all. And a lot of things went wrong with that fourplex. The first main thing was just systems. I didn't have the right systems really in place, and didn't have, if I would just do it all over again, I would have probably hired a property manager while I was even living there.
I was gonna ask that question, because I like Chris, people talk to me all the time. My pregnant wife, I begged her to go buy a 4-family or something that we could live in a unit. She said, fuck you, no shot. Go buy me a house. And she's the greatest. I have no complaints, but I tell people all the time, don't let them know you're the owner. Pretend, because exactly that, right? I'm the same way. Done is better than perfect. I say it in the office all the time. Just do it. I don't care. Just get it done. We'll figure it out later. If you make a mistake, like you said, things can go wrong, but they can't go that wrong.
Absolutely.
But the one recommendation now, and you brought it up, I was going to ask you is, I tell people all the time, if you're going to do it, put a layer of protection in there, right? Just open a company, call it the management company or whatever it is, or hire a third-party manager, because then you don't have to worry about a tenant knocking on your door at 2 a.m. or whatever it is, or calling your cell phone.
Exactly.
That is a huge part. So you learn, the hard way, let's call it. But it's definitely something I recommend, and I think it's super smart. But now, you could talk about that more than I can.
100%. So it was, where hell kind of broke loose is actually after I got cut and went to the Lions. Even while I was there, because I made the mistake, one, of telling people, yeah, I own the building, and didn't say. I should have just been like, yeah, I'm a manager and I happen to live here or something like that. And I mean, I had one tenant who I'd call a professional tenant. She figured out a way to make the outlets spark up, and she took a video of it while they sparked up to try and get, free rent. Like, oh, my thing's sparking, but like I need free rent, because it's like because Arizona is a very, very landlord friendly state. So I could have evicted her at any moment when she does something wrong, but she was in the business of trying to just, how many months of rent can I get out of this guy?
Yep.
I go to the electrician, and he's like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with this outlet. Then she breaks the refrigerator. I had a brand new refrigerator in there, breaks the refrigerator, breaks the bottom of it, and cuts her leg on it, and tries to, oh, I cut my leg. Like, instead of like, oh, I want to sue you, it was more of, can I just get a month of rent free? I'm like, no. Like, are you like literally out of her mind? And finally got her out of there. And I had another tenant who was one that I actually inherited, which is something I would advise against unless it's a larger property. It's more know your tenant base, and if you can, put them through your own background checks and things like that. Mm-hmm. Because this lady, I mean, she was sleeping with the previous owner.
Oh, that's fun.
In her at least 70s. I mean, my first time meeting her, she was literally like, I didn't know, let's say the old owner's name was Bob. I didn't know Bob was selling this building. Like, me and him, we had a really romantic relationship.
Rent with benefits.
Yeah. Yeah, she was literally like, is my rent going to, because she was the only, like, it was all 2 bedrooms. It was 3 2-bedrooms and 1 3-bedroom. And she was in the 3-bedroom. She was paying the cheapest in rent. She was paying like $400 or $500, and like market there was like $859. Mm-hmm. And she was like, is rent going to go up? I'm like, yeah. She was like, do you want to come over for dinner tonight? And I was like, no. And like, long story, like that, I should have took that as a red flag instantly. So that was like August. And like later, after I got cut from the Cardinals and went to the Lions, I get a call from that lady's daughter. And like, I was in the process of she was in the process. I gave her literally straight up the cash for keys. Didn't even want to go through the eviction process with her. I wasn't paying her anything. I paid for her moving truck to get her out of there. Mm-hmm. And because she wasn't paying the rent. And her daughter calls me, and she's like, my mom's in the hospital.
Want to come for dinner? Me and my mom?
She was more along the lines of, she actually hated her mom. And she was a student at Arizona State. And she was like, look, my mom just tried to kill herself. She's in the hospital now, blah, blah, blah. But I know you were kicking her out. You can kind of talk to me, figure out this process of getting all this stuff out. But I think she has a lot of her friends still living in the place. And like, I had no idea. I had no idea she had people in there, and she had a dog in there. So my fiance now was still in Arizona, packing up our place, because I mean, once you get cut and go somewhere, you have practice the next day. Yeah, so I'm like in it and trying to learn. And I mean, I was just with the Cardinals for a year and a half, 2 years, and then when you go to a whole new team, a new playbook I literally can't compare it to anything else. Like how hard and how long it takes.
So that's something that I played baseball, right? We're the simpletons, right? You have a couple signs, and it's very easy, and that's it exactly. It's like, I know that this is slide, right? That's it. And if you don't get on base, you don't even have to know the signs. So, but what I always, you play Madden when you're younger, you have fun. And the thing that I always said, because I didn't play football, but we play football, like pickup football or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I always wondered that. I was like, when you get traded, that's got to be the hardest thing in the world, because 1,000 plays, all different calls and audibles and signs. I give you guys a ton of credit, because that's got to be a whole nother animal. And then trying to manage real estate and a relationship and life, that can't be easy.
Insane. I mean, all the playbooks, all your playbooks on your iPad, you lose that iPad, you get fined $15,000 for it.
Jeez. Better off paying rent for 6 months.
Exactly. Exactly. And the quarterbacks don't use iPads; they use physical. They get the paper version, and like when you see it in paper version, it's like no joke, like that thick.
That's
it's
crazy.
Insane. But so all of that's happening right when I just get to Detroit. Like, not even in my place, like not even in like an apartment yet. I'm literally in a hotel. And so my fiance goes and checks out the unit, because we need to get it clean so we can start getting it ready, for the next tenant. And she goes into the back room, and literally she was a drug addict, and she had a whole bunch of her drug addict friends there. And after she tried to kill herself and went to the hospital, she was in the hospital for about a week until my fiance went in there. They left her dog in the back room and just locked the door, and just the dog kept peeing and pooping and peeing and pooping and peeing and pooping and peeing and pooping. So they took a candle and just grabbed a candle and just slid it in there so it can make the smell a little bit less. Closed the door. Of course, the dog knocked the candle over. That room itself caught on fire. And like, I don't know how just using some drug addict superpowers and got the fire out. Because that entire room was black, covered in soot. All the vents in that, every vent in that apartment unit had smoke, had like black smoke, like on the outside of it. So it was a nightmare. And like, I'm freaking out because like, obviously I'm trying to learn all this stuff, and like, this is happening back there. And like, my fiance's getting into it with the people. Like, I can't believe you guys did this to her, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, and I can't leave Detroit and go to Arizona for like a day. It's like, there's physically no time to even do that. And finally got her out of there and got like a nice, our new tenant in there. He's awesome. I have an amazing family, kind of everything. But like, that was the most stressful time of like, I can't like, I wouldn't put that on anybody. But now, like, obviously after that, I've put the systems in place, have a property manager. Like, I don't get calls like that. You know, the calls going straight to my property manager. Property manager doesn't call me for issues that are below $500. It's just take care of it. You have the operating account. Like, you know what to do. And like that, just get a property manager.
So that story right there, right? Like, that's because, you spoke about credibility earlier on, and I tell people, how do I get started in real estate? I said, write a check, do something, invest in a deal, figure it out. And, there's a war story. That's like, that is a war story. New team, new playbook, fiance, another state, nutcase tenant, drug addict, fire, hungry dogs, you basically summed up everything. The only thing you were missing is probably a shooting or a murder simultaneously. Other than that, you basically touched on like landlord's worst fear.
Yeah.
So, coming from someone that, let's say you were overeducated. I'll take your words. Did your education help there, or it was just figuring it out on the fly? It doesn't.
No, let's figure it out on the fly. Same thing. Even with the education perspective, you don't learn much until you're actually in it. Like,
there's no, so when you learn, there's no playbook where you flip to the page where it says drug addict fire, right? Like that's not in the real estate playbook.
This is a cap rate. This is a NOI. This is cash.
Yeah. There's no, exactly. So, he's learning how to do, a Hail Mary or some playbook, and then you got that going on. And that's why I tell people all the time, if you try and underwrite to every situation, there's stuff that, and we have a conversation, we own 3,500 apartments, it's the same thing. My partner and I, and even Chris, we bang heads when we want to think of every possible thing that can go wrong to protect yourself in contract. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't work that way, because every deal, there's something new. There's a closing cost that you never knew about. There's that situation. There's just things that come up that you could budget for, but you never know. But you're still living, you're breathing, you own more deals, and you got through it. And that's the thing that, we tell people all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's, why we wanted to have you on. One of the reasons, you can't just do it. You're here, you're living, you're breathing, whether you made money, lost money, or broke even, it's irrelevant, but you've learned. And that education is worth, the physical doing of it is probably worth more than anything. Forget the dollars, because now you went out and did it again, 100%. And you're going to continue to do it.
I could have, knowing myself, I could have majored in something completely different, flipped 0 houses in college, and still bought that fourplex, and the same things would have happened. And I think still be in the same position right now, because you just learn same thing. Like you just said, you learn so much off of experience. And then once you start to do it, you realize, okay, this is what's actually possible. Mm-hmm. I think you learn so much more from one experience, and two, like meeting people like you guys, or talking to people like you guys, or honestly, podcasts is one of the greatest ways to learn, because you get to actually hear what's real versus, okay, I learned this in this online course or from this seminar or something like that. So,
and that's probably the thing that we set out to do this podcast for that exact reason. And people love this story. I bought a deal for 100, sold it for 400, and cash flowed like a motherfucker. Right? And everybody loves that story, but we don't want those stories, right? That story is the stuff that people can hear and probably can relate to better. Be like, oh wow, you know what? I have no experience, and that could happen to me. But we're here, we're living. That's what we set out.
Yeah.
What we set out to do was that exact story. Those are the ones that we want to know about. Not the 100%. It went from A to Z, 100% according to plan, and we all made a ton of money. It's like
Never goes that
we
way.
can talk about that, but what's the fun?
Yeah.
And I think that things like that, I think that's situations exactly like that is what separates people who are going to be, I'm going to invest in real estate for the next 80 years versus no shot, I'm done. I'm selling this property. I'm going to go get a job and like, that's it. And I'll just tell people stories. Oh, I had a fourplex back in blah, 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 blah. I see it all the time. There's those old people. Oh, you don't want to get into apartments. Don't want to get into apartments. I promise you, it's going to they had something like that happen. They couldn't persevere through it.
Yeah. I think part of it too is hearing stories like this. A lot of people, and myself included before I started, you just have fear of what ifs and what could go wrong. And like you said, that's probably about as bad as it can possibly go. And if somebody else can figure out a way through it while working probably a 10 to 12 hour job while working, on a relationship and then moving to another state, nobody else really can have an excuse for, being afraid of what can happen and not being able to come out on the other side.
What about the other side? What position did you play when you played football?
Tight end.
Tight end. Okay, so he's got to block, 265-pound thoroughbred athletes from crushing the quarterback, right? Like, add that into the mix.
Yeah.
Like, anyone can go work a 10-hour job, right? That's and you could own real estate and deal with it, interstate, all that stuff. But then he's also got a guy that wants to rip his head off. Or you have to go across the middle and catch a pass from a guy that's also trying to crush you. So you throw that that into it. It's like, come on, don't tell me you can't do it, because I'm not buying that anymore.
Yeah,
I think Charlie Sheen said it best. Can't is the cancer of happen.
There you go.
I like that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us what you've moved on to now? I know you said you've been moving into the multifamily space. How's that been going? Why did you choose to go there? What have you been doing since, whenever that started?
So a couple things. I'm going to tell you another story. It's an L in my book, but it's another learning experience for me as well. Once I got to Detroit, closed on that duplex, was living on one side, Airbnb on the other side, I really had that moment of, I'm not about to be this small time fourplex and duplex investor. I don't see myself doing that. I see how much of a headache these smaller properties are. They're not scalable by any means of the word scalable. And, I want to start getting into bigger things. So I read the book, Multifamily Millions, read the book, Emerging Markets, ABCs of Real Estate Investing. There was a lot of, I wouldn't say there was no analysis paralysis, because this is all mid-season and I was on the practice squad at that point. So, I really didn't have to really be engaged, half engaged more into real estate. During breaks, during, most guys are, whether it's depending on the locker room you're in, whether it's you're playing ping pong, whether you're playing games, whether you're just on your phone for hours and hours and hours at a time, I would be in my locker just reading.
So here, I got a one, and not to interrupt you, but
no, you're good.
There's, against the herd mentality, right? A 20-something-year-old kid in a clubhouse or in a locker room with, 35, 40-year-olds maybe, down to, young 22-year-olds. They want to play games. They want to have fun. They want to go out. You picked up a book and read, what was, forget, your family telling you not to do it. Forget, the old guy saying, oh, I owned a fourplex. It's a horrible idea. Talk about, 50, 60 plus athletes. And when you broke out a, Multifamily Millions book, did anyone what are you doing? Are you crazy? How was that?
It was a mix of both. One was, what are you crazy? And then it was the guys who were interested in real estate honestly just gravitated towards me. It was like, yo, that's kind of dope. That's a pretty cool book, blah, blah, blah. And then it honestly came down into one when I was in Detroit. It's funny you say that. I used to have 4, 5, 6 guys over the house at a time. My fiance would cook dinner. I still have a pretty solid library behind me. But I had a really big library when I was in Detroit, and I'd let the guys, take a book, and they'd come back. We come back, we do it again a week later, 2 weeks later, and we kind of talk about the things from those books, and it was kind of like an open revolving library. It's really cool because like
if they lost one of those books, would you charge them $15,000 like the playbook?
I'm actually missing one of them. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I need to get that book back. But yeah, it was more of like that. Like even those group of guys. Like now, we're still really really close. I'm actually helping one of those guys. I mean, last week we had a long conversation with him and his mom about him buying his first fourplex. He actually lives out in Arizona. Connected him with the broker that I used for my fourplex, and kind of continued that relationship. But you're right. Some people gravitated. Some people told their stories. And what you'll notice in the NFL and a lot of different places, and I'm sure you guys notice it in real estate as well, at least with real estate, a lot of people, there's two different types of people. There's people who are very collaborative, want to put you on, show you what you've done, do all of that. And there's the other people who are just like, they brag, they tell you their numbers, but then that's it. It's like, yeah, I got properties in this, I got properties there, I got this, I got that, and cool. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm trying to get to that level. Like, how do we kind of make something happen here? And it's more of like, I can't really explain it, but it's like a lot of people are just very selfish with their information and with the things that they've done, and don't really want to. I'm all about putting people on, showing them exactly how I did it, and not really caring if we do something together or we don't do something together. It's just more of, here's the value, you do what you want with it, but this is exactly how I did it.
Right.
So you'll see that a lot in the NFL. Like, oh, I'm investing in this tech company. I mean, I got into this cannabis company. I got into this deal, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but how'd you do it? And how do you put everybody else in this locker room on to doing that?
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah. Oh, and back to, I guess, what I was saying before, decided I didn't want to be a small-time investor and wanted to get into larger properties, and multifamily millions is what really introduced syndications to me. Because it's crazy. Like, I mean, after getting a degree in commercial real estate, after flipping houses, after buying a fourplex, I still had the stigma in my mind that if I wanted to buy an apartment building, I had to come up with a down payment and put that down payment down and own that property outright on my own, until I read Multifamily Millions, and I was like, whoa, I didn't know I could do this.
Yeah.
And it was January literally I set it up. So, all of December, I hired a demographer on Upwork to figure out the top markets that I wanted to focus on investing, and narrowed it down to a couple different filters. And it's funny, Columbus, Ohio is one of those markets.
There you go.
It's a great market.
I guess we know what we're doing a little bit.
Yeah.
And literally called the Economic Development Committee, Chamber of Commerce of all those markets, asked them questions of, what type of incentives are you offering big businesses to move here? How many permits do you have out for construction? I've seen you had an upward trend of job growth in this past year. What measures do you have in place to continue it, or are you guys complacent with it? And you can just tell off a short conversation whether they're very complacent or they're a market that's really forward thinking and really got jobs coming there. And so I decided on those markets and called brokers, had conversations with all those brokers, and figured out, literally lined up a schedule for all of January, and spent 3 weeks in January going market to market to market to market to market, meeting with property managers. I would meet with an NFL guy who lived in that, or just through networking, an NFL guy who lived in that market, meet with property managers, attorneys, everything, about 2-3 days in each market. And it was amazing. That was when I really realized I was on fire, and that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And after that whole entire trip, I went under contract. That was January, about February-ish, early March, February. I negotiated. It was a pretty big project in St. Louis, or an area called the Central West End, it would be like the Scottsdale of St. Louis. And it was $8.7 million property. I negotiated the seller to carry back a percentage of the down payment. So I would have had to have came up with like $2.5 million, but he carried back $1.5 million. So I only had to raise $1 million. And during that month of January, I also had created a sample deal package and presented it to a whole bunch of different investors, and got commitments of upwards of $1.5 to $2 million, and put an offer in on that property. Had bankers lined up, had everything under contract. And it was a day before the inspection is when I got the Realty 12 from the seller's accountant, and got to see the actual numbers of what was coming in and what was coming out. And the NOI was off by almost $200,000.
Damn.
And I was like, it made my stomach turn, because it was like, I could still make this deal work if I switch the equity split from 70-30 to maybe 90-10 or 95, just to make the deal work.
Right.
And I just kind of just had that. I was like, you know what? I got to walk away from it, like mid due diligence, and walked away from it. And like, it really helped with my investors because they gained a deeper level of trust with me. But I saw it more. I mean, I saw it as a win, but I also saw it as an L because I wasted a solid 2.5 months of. I was living in Detroit and I had to fly back and forth to St. Louis to negotiate with this guy. I would go to breakfast, the same place with this freaking owner, and he just wound up being a bold-faced liar. And after that, I mean, as soon as March, that was March, mid-March is when I figured all that out. And then OTA started up again for the next season. And it was just like, I'm foot on the gas, on fire. And then it's like slamming the brakes again. And it was just like, damn, like, I want to do this for a living. And then this past season just kind of went by and now we're here and we're where we at now. But that's how I kind of got and shifted into the larger out of that smaller duplex, fourplex kind of world.
So there are some things that you brought up that I think that, like you said, it was a win, but you consider it an L. I think the from my standpoint, we talk about it all the time, telling me trying to force it to work and changing the splits works, but probably one thing you'll look back on 10 years, 5 years, whatever, you'll look back on bailing on the deal, forgetting getting the real financials or not, but not forcing a deal and walking away was probably the smartest decision ever, because going to your investor, you're educating them for months, giving them a sample book, explaining it to them, but having the confidence to go back to everybody and saying, guys, it's not going to work. It's, bailing, they know that you're taking the right steps. So those commitments, they're there for the next one because they know you're not going to buy something that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Now their return might have still worked if you made it work at a 90-10, but the other side of that coin, you've just built an investor base that's with you for life now. But the other side of that is from the sponsor standpoint. Let's say the deal wasn't working and you would have made it work at 90-10 or 95-5. You're working for free. And that deal becomes really, really shitty. And we know what it's like. I mean, we've all bought a bad deal. It's happened. We talk about scaling up. We got a duplex with a bunch of piece of shit investors in it that I'd blow my brains out, right? And I'll be honest, and I'll tell them to their face. They're blacklisted on all my deals. I'll never take another check from them again. But telling people no and bailing, you don't want to work for free because you end up spending more time on the deal and it just doesn't work. But you got to do it because you got to do the right thing for the investors in the deal. So you end up, it's a loss, but that loss was an education win and probably a win with your investor base.
100%.
Yeah, definitely a short-term loss. But I'm actually really curious because I get asked this question, I'm sure you do, and you probably get as well, Hakeem, is like how to start raising money. So can you kind of talk through the process of, you'll probably be a little bit different than other people because you had an expanded network of guys who are high-income earners. Maybe, I would assume so. But what was that process for you? Where did you find the resources, and what was the route you took that, you were able to go out and get, $1.5 million to $2 million of soft commitments? It
was more, I had paid for, I think it was $130 for Michael Blank's syndicated deal analyzer. And that was when I really, really just educated myself on how to really, really underwrite a deal and do it almost in your sleep. Like, I'm sure you guys both know, I know you guys both know how to do it in your sleep damn near now.
We hope so.
And it was 100% education based, because most guys in the NFL don't, some guys do real estate, some guys do flips. Most guys, 99% of guys aren't really getting into apartment buildings. And about 100% of them don't even know what a cap rate is.
Right.
So I took the route of just, it was pure. I built out a sample deal of a 42 unit apartment building in Phoenix, Arizona. Went through, before I even went through it, I literally give them a very, very simple explanation of a cap rate and kind of do it like, okay, we're in a 10 cap market, property cost $1 million, NOI is $100,000. And we decrease expenses, raise rents, and now the NOI is $130,000, which we've essentially raised the value of that property by $300,000. But that takes about 15, 20 minutes because you got to really, really go into detail with that. And then just kind of go literally through an entire investor package, show them the P&L sheet, the acquisition summary, how the cap rate kind of works from that 10 cap to whatever market we're actually in, who the team is, who the property manager is, what type of deals that property manager's done. Then it kind of goes into the return section. Okay, if you invested, we're doing minimums of 50,000. So if you invested 50,000, this is what your returns would look like over the next 5 or 7 years, whatever the projection. I think for that deal was 5. And kind of everything, and who's the attorney, who's my partners, everything. And then it's like, look, so I do not have this property under contract. There's no pressure. There's no nothing. But when I get a property just like this under contract, is this something that you'd be interested in investing? Like, yeah, I'd love to. And I think my buddy and this guy would too. And this guy on my team is actually really doing stuff like this. Like, okay, cool. So how much would you blah, blah, blah? Yeah, I could do probably 75,000. And then I just have an Excel spreadsheet, just everybody's name and what their commitment is. And then you keep those commitments warm until you actually have a deal. And when it's time to actually present the deal, like before I walked away from the deal, I already went back to the entire soft network and did the same exact thing, built the new deal package out in the same exact format as the sample deal. So it was less intensive. I still went through it, walked them through it, but it was more of, exactly what I'm talking about now because we just had this conversation a month ago. But with NFL guys, where it adds what adds another level of complications is 60% of them have an FA. So you also have to pitch their FA. And a lot of those FAs are, I wouldn't say not the brightest tools in the shed, but more of not the, I wouldn't say maybe ethical tools in the shed, in the sense that a lot of those guys only do deals with people that they're boys with and they're getting a kickback from as well. So
we did a deal in Foley, Alabama. It turned out it was a 16 deal, home run deal. I co-sponsored it with another group, and her cousin played for the Jets. He was a tight end for the Chiefs, and now he's actually a tight end or defensive end, one of them. We had a meeting with him, and he had his financial advisor there. And literally at the end of the meeting, everything went well. The guy came over to me. He's like, so what's in it for me? And I was like, are you a fucking idiot? That's your cousin. Like, you realize we're going to tell him that you're literally just steering him down the road. Exactly. Like you said, sharpest tool in the shed, wrong. It's ethical. It's, they're just not. And, you could speak to it more than we can, right? That was just one meeting, and you brought it up, and I could tell a story about it. But
absolutely,
it's crazy that this is what's happening with people. And it's not only that's the NFL level. It's crazy, but they're just not doing the right thing for people. And you're looking out for these guys, saying, guys, like, we went through this once. I know he has to agree with it, but here's the whole other side of it. Like, it's going to work.
That definitely adds a level of. It complicates a lot of things, and sometimes the guys will be 100% down, 100% with you, and then the FA will be like, "Oh, my FA is saying that I can't invest in anything right now because of some BS excuse." When everything's public knowledge in the NFL, how much someone's getting paid, what their bonus was, how much, and when they just got paid that bonus. And it's like, I know that's BS, but I get it. But that was definitely that's probably the biggest hurdle with it is honestly just dealing with some of the FAs. And some are 100% like super sharp know exactly what's going on, and like, cool, we'll do the deal, just do these background checks on you and your team, and then boom, we're good. And like, those are the best. But then there's this, like I just said, the ones that are just like, I've literally pitched deals to FAs, and the FA turn around and say, I don't think you should even be doing this deal. I think you should probably get into one of these deals that I'm getting. Are you out of your mind?
That's hysterical. I'm glad you just aired out, so whoever's listening to this, whoever it may be, whether it's one person or a million people.
I think it's closer to a million.
A million would be great, but I love that, right? That's like as real as it get on the table. Because you're looking at, one thing we also do is I like to look out for everybody that we do business with, right? It's an investor, someone asking us a question. Like you said, I think adding value is tremendous. But, people, I hope that athletes do listen to this, but in any way, shape, or form, and they hear from someone inside the locker room knowing that, double check, make sure these guys have your best interest in mind, because that's the unfortunate side of it. And I mean, you've probably seen it, the guys that, get taken advantage of. And 3 years after they're retired, 5 years after they're retired, it's just totally different.
And I mean, and another one of the big issues that people don't realize is with the, it's hard. I mean, I don't care now. I'm not in the NFL. What you notice is I call it the mommy effect. Unlike me, because I went through the mud, I was a bench player in college, didn't get my first catch till my senior year. So I never had any type of like, oh, he's a star athlete. He's getting all the treatment, whatever. But in the NFL, there's a lot of guys. A majority of guys who were gods in college got treated like, rose petals when they walk around. Some guys didn't even have to go to class because there's such a distraction to campus that they get private tutors for their entire degree. Mm-hmm. And they have everything handed to them. They go to the NFL, same thing. Their bills all paid by someone for them. They need their license is about to expire. Somebody goes to the DMV for them. Oh, their registration. Oh, everything is literally taken care of, and it puts you in the position of you have almost no responsibilities. And I think that can be devastating because they start to handle their money that same exact way. And it's like, okay, I brought in, X amount of millions in this year, and I can invest, say, $1 million or $2 million in UFA. You take that and you do what you got to do with that $1 million, $2 or whatever $1 million. And there's when I say a massive disconnect between the player and the FA, like there's no like how I'm talking about like purely education before even talking about investing. It's just invest, and like that education portion is honestly not there at all, and it's sickening to me.
No, I hear. Do you find there's also like, because I've seen it talking to like financial advisors or wealth managers or things of that nature, and unwillingness to go kind of into like a quote unquote alternative asset that isn't something that they probably, learned in school or, is publicly traded or things of that nature. Do you think it's that part as well, or not as much?
100%. Most of those guys don't even want them to get into real estate because they don't get their cut if it's not into the stock market.
Right.
Like,
they're not getting an override, and the real estate's it's the better investment. I'm not saying stocks are bad or bonds are bad, but that stuff's the traditional stuff.
Shit about them.
that stuff's the traditional stuff, and the guys are getting kickbacks and getting paid, which is so illegal and ethically wrong and wrong. And then this side of it, it's like they can't hide that somewhere in like the costs, and
absolutely
it's wrong. And I'm sure you said it 100%. It's just that the alternative investment of real estate, cannabis, different things is just, there's more pushback because it's just, they don't want to get on board with it.
Exactly. It could make 100% on 100% sense on paper, X's and O's, everything. The athlete's 100% down for it. Athlete's done its own research and all of that. Then the FA is just more like, no, like we're only going to do traditional investments, blah, 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 blah. I've had that exact conversation of, we don't do that. We only do traditional investments.
It's crazy. But even, that is mind blowing to me because I was a financial advisor for 3 years. Stockbroker, whatever. I left because I hated the physical investment side of that. I just hated it. I knew nothing about the products. And, I was a financial advisor. My uncle's a stockbroker or a financial advisor, and I'll talk badly about it. Was I successful? Doesn't matter. But I hated selling those products. I literally hated it because I had no control. You have no control over what's going on. Real estate, your story is a perfect example. You got the financials and pulled the plug. Whereas a financial advisor, you're just selling someone something that you can't do anything about. You have physical control over everything, and you can show, I think the way that you broke about, Chris's question on how to raise money was to a T. I felt like I was talking to someone because you literally, you don't raise money for the deal today. You raise it for when you find that deal in 6 months or 12 months.
Absolutely.
And you laid that out beautifully. Give them a sample deal that doesn't exist. Explain to them what a cap rate is. Educate your investor base when you have a deal. You've already hurdled the education side. And the way you laid it out is exactly what you can do. Anyone listening, anyone new, anyone I talk to, experienced or new, that laid out is the detailed plan on how to do it. Whereas, a stock or a bond, you're buying something that you have no control over. You've literally showed people how you could control it by lowering expenses and the same cap rate and creating value. You can't create value in Apple stock. You physically can. I can't. Chris can't. Anyone listening to this podcast can, because you're not going to own enough stock. So you can't do anything to create value. In a real estate deal, if you're looking at a deal and the management percentage is 12%, and market is 3, you're going to shave the expenses significantly. And it's 100%. A very easy value add proposition. So I think the way you laid out raising money and everything that went behind it was like to a T, like textbook.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Cause like, I think it really made sense to me when I did my first, like tried to raise capital from, not raise, but education session. It made the most sense to me because when I was like my very first time, I was nervous as hell. Like, I don't know what's about to go down. But then after I educated him, I realized that, I'm not, one, I'm providing an opportunity, but 2, I have no deal yet. So it's not even a pitch. And like people don't realize that, yes, in certain situations, pitching is necessary, but people don't realize that humans aren't stupid and they know what desperation feels like.
Yep.
Fake energy. So if you just went under contract with a property, now you got 30 days to raise this capital, it's going to be extremely hard because they know. And like you can hide it, you can act like, oh, I'm good, but you can't fake energy at the end of the day. And like when you don't have anything to sell and it's just purely educational, either you're in, you're out, or do you know somebody who would like to do something along these lines, but this isn't it. Just know this is like, once I got done that first pitch, I was just like, whoa, that was like at the end of it, you're all nervous. Like, is he going to say yes? You can say, I'm like, it doesn't even matter because I don't have there's nothing that I'm desperate about. And I have a list of 300 people more that I have to go and talk to. So it's just like,
it's so the one thing you mentioned, well, I say it all the time, present an opportunity, don't ask for money. And like you said, the no's that you got practicing are like the best things in the world. Cause like you said, people know when you're coming down to the wire and then you start, your 70-30 goes to 90-10 and your prep goes from 6 to 12. You just start changing crazy stuff. But when you just practice and it's an education pitch, it's like, it's not a pitch. It's a pitch, but it's really an educational hour, 2 hours, whatever. When you're sitting down with someone, it's almost like going to grab a beer and bullshitting with your friend. Exactly. As opposed to, suit, tie, professional, sit down, I need your money. It's totally different. It's, hey, listen, I'm telling you right now.
Way softer.
Exactly. And then at the end, like you said, how you ask, at some point you have to ask. But it's like, hey, if this deal comes up, would it be something you consider? No problem. Why? Or if it's, oh yeah, I'd love to do that. Okay, well, if this did come up, what would, what makes sense? 50, 100, 2, whatever. But those answers are literally like gold because you take that, you put in an Excel sheet, and like you said, when you find the real deal, you keep them interested, you send them a mail, you post something on Facebook, I'm going to tour deals in Columbus.
Exactly. Start a newsletter and make sure that you have all their email addresses anyway, so send them a newsletter. Look, I'm doing this. I was just a guest on a real estate experience.
Now in your group, you're the expert. So how many questions you get from friends? You're like, oh, have you ever heard of an FHA loan? I'm going to buy my first house, right? And they start asking you questions about everything. But it's that 6-month runway of education while you're educating yourself that you just automatically go right to the top of the list for all your people. And if one person took anything away from this, yes, the stories are great, but that's your blueprint for raising money. I could, there's, no way I could say it better. I mean, you thank God you said it because people are getting sick of hearing me say it. That's for sure.
Because I'm curious, because I think a lot of people misinterpret or misunderstand the time and the amount of people you need to speak to. How long would you sit with someone and educate them on that example deal, not even a real deal? And how many people did you speak to? How many said they might be interested? How many actually gave you, like, break down like the full funnel? Like, I spoke to 1,000 people, or I reached out to 1,000 people, and 300 said they would meet with me, and 100 said, they would think about it, and break that down.
I'd say, time sitting down probably takes so much more than you think it's going to be one. I remember my very first sit down was actually wildly someone random from Bigger Pockets. We went out to dinner, and I'm thinking, it'd be a quick 20-minute dinner, whatever. And it was 2.5 hours. They had so many questions. They want to know more about me besides even like, we did the whole deal. They asked all their questions and they wanted to know about me. And then at the end of it, they were like, yeah, we could do, it was wild. They were like, yeah, we can do $400,000. And I was like, what? I put it this way. It was in Phoenix and I had a rental car. I crashed my rental car leaving the parking lot right in front of them. And I just look like such an idiot right now. But the breakdown, I'd probably say talk to. I mean, besides even the commitments, once you get your commitments, that don't mean shit because
That's a whole other issue.
once you get down to actually when the deal comes around, the excuses and the things that come out of left field, that's real life. So I mean, I'd say I don't have the actual number. I need to get that.
I ballpark it, like gut feeling. What do you think?
Let's say reached out to 300, had meetings with maybe 150, and maybe 60, 65 people would say, yes, I'll commit to X amount. But then when it comes down to the nitty gritty of those 65 who are actually about it, 35, maybe. Like it's,
as I tell people all the time, whatever you think you have to raise, double it. And whatever your commitment, if you have $1 million in commitments, you're raising 500,000, maybe, because it always comes. Because you also got time of the year, right? It's coming up to the end of the year. You got Christmas and all the holidays, and you got Thanksgiving. Then everyone turns investing off until the beginning of the year, and then the beginning of the year you run into every month there's a holiday, and you get to the summer, and there's always and then yes, you got taxis, and you got all that's the regular excuses, and then you just hear everything from everybody.
Everything,
grandmas, uncles, friends, brothers, sons, cat has pneumonia, and they might need 100,000 from me. It's like
car accident, car broke, house. Yeah. Oh, I got a new house. I'm like, what the fuck did you get a new house for? Yeah. It's
just what he says. We talk about it all the time, and it's just good to hear from somebody else's experience. What it was actually like on a high level number basis. But
definitely, I think I need to go down to my Excel spreadsheet and maybe make a piece of on the realities.
It's a funnel. It literally is. If you think of a funnel, that's how it works.
Yeah, and I think you're doing deals. You've done deals. You've walked on deals. You've closed on deals. If you can do one thing on the money raising side, the thing that we always get told, and I tell people all the time, start yesterday. Do you wish you would have started the education earlier, or you don't think you were there yet? Do you know what I'm saying? You know what the question is? Like,
in what sense are you saying? Do I wish I would have started raising capital before, just started instead of analysis paralysis? 150%. Yeah. I mean, I wish the day I stepped into the NFL, I started to get those, just educating people and getting soft commitments and really, really, really building up a nest egg and a bubble. Because like I said before, people love you a lot more while you're playing versus when you're done playing.
And that's one thing that I tell people all the time. And, we have a monthly meetup every month, and people ask me all the time, and I say, there's no one that's been doing this business, whether they own one duplex or single family rentals or millions and millions of units. You're never going to look at someone that's doing it and say, oh man, I raise money like that, right? They all wish they would have started the money side earlier, because it's the hardest thing to do, because asking for someone for money or offering them an opportunity, nobody wants to ask their parents, their mom, their uncle, their friend, their sister, coworkers, or whoever it may be, give me 50,000, right? It's a tough ask.
100%.
But start it. If you're listening to this podcast or you hear any of it, even if you've never even looked at a book before, just ask a simple question. Hey, if I found the best deal in the world, would you invest, right? That is a warm, soft ask. Then when you educate that person, that soft ask becomes a hard, rock solid commitment, because they know that you've educated and they've already said something. And no one, if you say, hey, I'm looking at real estate, would you be interested in it? That's all you got to do. Would you be interested in real estate? Yes. Perfect. That's a soft commitment. They're not going to say, are you crazy? Lose my number. Like, nobody's going to do that. And if they do, then that guy's never investing anyway. Yeah, so
100%. And I think you should lean into people and don't be scared. Back to collaboration over competition. Like, lean into people in the sense of, okay, I want to get started. I'm about to start doing, if I had this real estate deal, would you invest? Yeah. Okay, cool. Next day later, hey, Chris, my uncle's got $3 million. I know he wants to invest in real estate, but I don't know shit about real estate, but I love what you and you guys are doing. So do you maybe want to do a sit down, do a dinner with me, you and my uncle, and we maybe use that capital in one of your deals? Like something like that. Lean into someone who's already doing it, maybe, and use that capital in that sense. If you're too scared to now do it on your own, because collaboration over competition, because maybe you don't get shit from Chris on that deal, but you're going to learn everything because Chris is going to let you learn everything. Or maybe you get 1% equity or 2%. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I hear you 100%.
so much when you do it that way.
That's perfect. That's literally. We only had to pay him a couple bucks to say that. I joke around with people all the time. I say, you never. I present you an opportunity. If you like what you heard, go tell people about it. Because you're right. If you're starting out, you never know, and you may get something, you may not. But if you bring value to the table, the education you're going to get and going through with someone that's done it is worth more than banging your head against the wall for 4 years and you never do anything. So, I mean, that right there is just. I mean, you couldn't have said it better. I mean, I feel like I'm talking to myself sometimes. It's like now someone hears someone else say it because people are like, this kid's crazy. You're not. What are you talking about?
It's real. I mean, when I was in college, like when I flipped those 10 houses, like I wasn't getting equity from it. I was making 12 to 15 bucks an hour, but the amount of shit that I learned from an entrepreneurial perspective, from a systems perspective, from a how to handle a construction project and actually how to do different things, like it was an invaluable. I could have did all of that for free and still been as happy and still bragged about it as much as I do right now because it was an amazing learning experience. I wish though back then he was doing apartment buildings. Oh my gosh, I can imagine.
No, I hear. So what do you got going on now? What are you working on lately?
So now I'm actually working on a couple projects in Florida. I'm working with a private equity group out of Israel who wants me to sponsor some deals here in the States. They want to allocate their real estate strategy. They were in Berlin, Germany for like the last few years, and they want to allocate their strategy here to the States.
Nice.
So we're working on some deals in Florida right now with that. I just closed on a 7-unit in Des Moines, Iowa. And then I'm getting very heavily involved into the cannabis industry. I own 40 acres in Michigan that we're about to develop on.
Nice.
That's awesome.
That's really interesting. We actually looked at a farm, a grow up in Portland, Oregon. We ended up, this is maybe a year or 2 years, right? Maybe a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's a super intriguing space that the long-term horizon is a lot better than the short-term.
100%.
You don't know, but I think, you're not you're not ahead of the curve by all means, and but I think that getting involved now only can set up the future. I mean, I love the space. I couldn't sell my partner on it. He was, he wants instant gratification, which I don't understand. Yeah. You got to have a little bit of a long-term,
absolutely
long-term view, but I think that's super intriguing.
You can expect, if you want to get into the cannabis industry, just know, don't expect to make $1 for 5 years, maybe even 10 years.
Yep.
And if you can get over that, then everything else will just kind of be like it's awesome. I just made this much money.
Yep.
If you can get over that, then I think that's where the biggest value in the cannabis. I mean, it's the green rush, in my opinion, but it's more of, if you're just a stoner trying to make a quick $1 million, it's just not going to happen.
No.
If you're a capitalist just thinking that it's just this and you're not going to educate yourself on the industry, same thing, it's not going to happen. I think it's more of, you have to have a blend of both, not necessarily be a stoner, but learn about the industry and also have business capabilities and, wherewithal and understand the numbers and kind of everything behind it all.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. Where can people get a hold of you? Where can they learn more about you?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at my username is at HakValles80, HAKV as in Victor, ALLES, and then the number 80. And then LinkedIn and Facebook is just my name, Hakeem Valles. And I think a quote that I like to say is, the fortune's in the follow-up. I think we're presented with millions of opportunities every single day, different, introductions or soft or warm introductions. Like, oh, I know this guy, I could help you out with this. But no one actually follows up on those introductions or those. I mean, put it this way: you introduced me to Anton months ago. He's going to be on my podcast tomorrow. Actually,
awesome. That's awesome, man.
Back to just following.
He's doing ours in a week, I think.
Is it? That's awesome. And I think we hear podcasts all the time, and people you hear guests like, "Oh man, that's dope. I'd love to learn a little bit more from them." Like, people don't, and they give you their information, like shoot me a DM or shoot me an email, but no one actually does it. So I'd say just follow up. Like, if you want to have a chat with me, just reach out to me. Same thing with you guys, like for your, like, as a token of advice to your audience, like, don't be scared to reach out to someone. And then once you do follow up like a madman. Because that's where the goal.
I've been a guest on probably 20 podcasts. At the end of, I give my cell phone number out on the podcast. I just say, call me. it's just give me a call, right? Because you're right. I have 4 cold callers in the office, cold calling mobile homes, multifamily, and I say you want to be successful, answer your phone or call the voicemail back. There's no such thing as follow up in this business. It's mind blowing to me, but if you want something, go get it. And if they don't answer and you leave a voicemail, call back because nobody is going to give you anything. You're going to have to go get it. So again, just, reach out. We'll put that in the show notes and all that stuff so people have your contact information. But I've had a great time. I mean,
this is fantastic.
Awesome.
I'm super excited we had you.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you guys having me. Thanks again.
For sure. Thank you.